Welcome to today's podcast interview. I brought on Carlo Taormina. Carlo, welcome.
Hey Heather, how are you?
Good. Please give listeners a little background. Where do you live and what do you do?
So I am in Richmond, Virginia on the East Coast, and I am a men's high performance slash mindset coach and a keynote speaker.
Well, and obviously that's why I'm having you on. But let's just start at a foundational level. What does mindset mean to you?
Mindset means to me, how can I control my thoughts? How can I focus on what serves me so that way I can perform at my best, so I can bring out my true potential, whether it be in my business, whether it be in my personal life, relationships, finances. How can I become the best version of myself in here?
Yeah. What I like to say a lot is that your mindset will make you or break you in this lifetime. And I think there's a lot of emphasis on mindset, but can we maybe further explain why it's so important to, I don't want to use the word control, I think that can be taken negatively, but why it's so important to be mindful and intentional because this is running your life?
Yeah, of course. And it's so funny because I didn't realize this until, a few years ago of how self-awareness, being mindful of our actions, our thoughts, behaviors can definitely control our lives, what we choose to look at, focus on, etc. And something that I think hinders a lot of people, like 90% of people who may not be the happiest in the world, may not be the most fulfilled, is because we don't know that we can control this. We don't know that we can focus on what we choose to focus on, right? So, for the most part, my entire life, honestly, before a few years ago, I was always a passenger in my life versus the driver.
Yep.
So I was always experiencing the outside world, the external world as reality, 100% truth. And no matter what, this is how it is. But once I became so self aware on what I think about, why I'm thinking about it, how is this making me feel, how does this then develop into a behavior? Before then, I was just experiencing life. Now I'm actually living life intentionally because I'm actually being aware of who I am and what I think about.
Well, I think much of humanity is what I call sleepwalking.
Yeah.
And I did that. I called it Groundhog Day. And I remember in my 20s bitching and complaining to my parents, I feel like I'm going through life's motions. I used to Google how do I find my purpose? Like, what am I meant to be doing? And what has been top of mind for me lately, Carl Jung's infamous quote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, how much work or do you teach about like understanding your mental programming and the subconscious and the power to rewire it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I really like to start at at a foundational level, so something that I love doing, this is what I think helps not only great leaders become great leaders, but coaches as well, or anybody, even for yourself, if you want to lead yourself, is what questions am I asking, right? Because something I learned, I'm sure you've heard of this as well, is the quality of your life depends on the quality of questions you ask. So if we're just going through the motions of life, going through the same routine, and not really having a conversation with ourselves, not really, I don't know, just getting to know ourselves, right? The only conversations I noticed I had when I was unfulfilled, when I was stressed, was I hate this job, I hate my life, I hate all of this. And that was the only internal dialogue I had. And I didn't realize that I could actually have another type of conversation with this internal voice, right? So once I learned that, I started getting curious. I started asking questions. And when you're curious, when you are actually saying, okay, Carlo, why am I feeling sad? Okay, well, this happened. Well, could I have avoided this? Or could I have reacted differently to this situation? Right? So, a big thing that honestly, for me, is just how can I have a conversation with myself and how can I ask better questions?
Well, and what you're really touching on is self-inquiry, introspection. But on that note, let's take a step back. As I shared with you in the pre-call, many people are stuck on repeat telling us a negative narrative. And if you don't, life is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whatever you think about and speak about, you bring about. So
Mhm.
let's talk about those internal narratives and those dialogues and how they're keeping you stuck and playing small.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I could speak from my own experience, back in 2021, when I was depressed, laying in bed, was suicidal, the only thing I would say to myself was, I hate everything. I hate everybody. I hate myself. I am a loser. I am a failure. I will never amount to anything. I don't have a purpose. And, my life is essentially meaningless because I have nothing to live for, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of kept on repeat. And I started to develop these limiting beliefs about myself that I was never good enough and I'll never be able to amount to anything and never be able to achieve any type of dream or goal I have. And it was these limiting beliefs, these negative self-talks that I would have, that I would internalize, honestly, was a reason why I laid in bed every day for a year, right? It's just because I just kept saying that over and over and over again in my head. And what I realized is that it was simply a story I was telling myself. And then I started kind of diving deeper. Once I found the quote unquote light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm in my position now, looking back at the Carlo who wasn't doing so great. And I realized that all those things I was telling myself were simply a story that I happened to believe. And then I started diving deeper. And I was like, well, beliefs themselves essentially are just stories we tell ourselves with so much emotion invested into it. It's kind of hard for us not to believe it. And if we ask ourselves honestly and say, okay, well, I believe this about myself. Why do I believe this about myself? More often than not, you're going to find there was an event that happened in your life or somebody outside of you told you otherwise that kind of made you believe in something about yourself, something that you could or could not do. And then you kind of carry that with you your entire life. So anytime somebody would, or you would say to yourself, even if it's something simple, oh, I suck at math. It may have been because you may not have done well in math in like elementary school,
Right.
and then you kind of carried that with you throughout middle school, high school, and that's just like your new identity is you just tell yourself, I'm just not good at math. So therefore, it's like again, like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're
Right.
essentially making yourself bad at math. And we tell ourselves this with anything. And once I realized that these stories I'm telling myself are false, they're just a story. I don't have to believe it, I don't have to accept it. I then realized I had the power to change my own story and essentially do the exact same thing, but opposite, right? So if I wanted to feel smart and I felt dumb, if I wanted to feel successful and I felt like a failure, not only would I reframe the story and not only tell myself I'm successful, but I would actually go back in my brain's filing cabinets. That's what our brains are. They're just filing cabinets, pulling past experiences.
Yeah.
So what I did was instead of kind of ruminating on the experience that I failed or anything negative that is basically the story I'm keeping for myself, I would essentially do the exact opposite and go back in my brain's filing cabinet and pick a moment, two, three, four, five moments from my life where I did feel successful, where I did feel accomplished, where I did feel victorious over anything, and I felt like I'm capable of anything. And not only would I think about these moments, but I would actually relive them as if it were happening in real time to
Yeah.
solidify it. So not only do I overcome this limiting belief, but I have the power to rewrite a new limiting belief. I'm sorry, rewrite a powering belief about myself and
Yeah.
who I identify as, and then go back to my brain's filing cabinet and provide evidence to back up my claim.
There's so many avenues I can go down, but here's what's top of mind. Are you familiar with the book Psycho-Cybernetics?
No, I've never heard of that
Okay,
before.
so just very high level. Psycho-Cybernetics was written by Maxwell Maltz, who was a plastic surgeon, and this really comes into play what you're talking about. You've touched on the idea of self-image and self-concept, which are simply attitudes and behaviors we have about ourself, that
Mhm.
internal dialogue, our beliefs. But what Maxwell Maltz found in his journey as a plastic surgeon was the importance of psychology in changing people's outlook on their physical appearance. So, for example, there's tons of stories in the book, but I remember there was this sales guy, and I don't know if he had like big ears or a big nose, but his self-image was, I am ugly, and that's why people don't buy from me. And Maxwell Maltz found out that he could change the external, but until they changed their internal mental programming, their results in life didn't change.
Mhm.
And so, for example, I'll just share I've called entrepreneurship personal development on steroids.
Yeah.
So for me in 2017, I'll share my self-image and self-concept and limiting beliefs and I think that's why we're in the work we're doing. But for me, going from employee to entrepreneur was a very big shift.
Mhm.
Going from a paycheck to 100% commission it created a lot of fear, stress, worry. But anyway, I realized I was sitting in so much self-doubt, imposter syndrome, which was leading to procrastination and creating $0 in my bank account. So I kept spending money on strategy, mechanics, a new website. I joined a business builder, personal brand builder group. That was 6 grand. Like I was spending all this money and until I realized, oh my gosh, I had to create belief, confidence, and like a purpose. So now I was mission driven. That mindset, have you heard the saying, mindset, 80% mindset, 20% strategy or mechanics? I think it's like 90-10. But my point in saying all of that is life is a mirror. We keep trying to smudge the mirror, the external, get a new job, get a new relationship, whatever, until you realize you're the common denominator, change from the inside out.
Mhm.
So I'd love for you to share. Can you share maybe some client stories or even your personal one when you can uproot the limiting beliefs, when you can create belief, conviction, confidence? What's possible?
Oh, everything. So I'll use myself as an example because I know myself best better than anybody.
Yeah.
Is again, I want to paint a picture here. There is this guy in his early 20s laying in bed, right? Not wanting to get out because he does not believe in himself that he's not good enough to do anything. And he is at the threshold, as I like to say, between living and dying. And I don't want to make it overly dramatic, but that's where I was, because a big part of that was I did not believe in myself. I did not believe that anything was possible other than failure, defeat, unfulfillment, no purpose. From that guy to go to from point A to point B on top of the mountain, being able to help people in the exact same scenario I was in, I literally could not tell you this. Like, if I could go back in time and have this conversation with myself, I would think that is a load of BS. Like, there's no way I'm going to be the mindset guy. Like, get out of here. So, how people can really uproot these limiting beliefs is first off, understand that your thoughts are not your thoughts, right? Like, our minds are different from the self consciousness. What we think about is different and is separate from us, who we are as a spirit, soul, unit. Like, it's just different. It's separate. Instead of us being a spectator on these thoughts, why can't we manipulate them? Why can't we either reject or accept? Right. So I love this example. I use this for my clients all the time. I've never really seen this show, but everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say this. That episode of I Love Lucy, right? When they're in the chocolate factory and they see all the chocolates going on the conveyor belt. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
I'm sure if you look it up, you're like, it's gonna hit you. But anyway, it's Lucy and like her friend, they're working this chocolate factory. They have to like wrap up these truffles or whatever, and they're on this conveyor belt. And exactly, they're
Yep.
going so fast. I like to compare those chocolates or whatever's on the conveyor belt as your thoughts,
Mm.
right? You have the power to accept them and say, "Ooh, this is great. This is useful. This serves me. I'm going to pick it up and use it for myself." Or we can just let it be on the conveyor belt and just let it go by and just keep going by and not accept it. So when we do have these limiting beliefs that we constantly accept and hold as truth, ask yourself and write it down. Because this is what I did. Write down your limiting belief. Okay, perfect. You have it. It's tangible. You see it. Yeah, you might have some so-called proof in the back of your head from your brain's filing cabinet showing you, oh, see, Carl, this is why you are a failure because you failed at this, this, and this, and this. Okay, let's push that to the side right now. Just write down your limiting belief, or two or three, or how many you have. Now that you see it, now it's tangible, just under that, I want you to write down why it's BS. Every single reason. Why is this limiting belief so stupid, so idiotic, so unrealistic? And write it down. And then once you do that, write down the belief you need in order to become the best version of yourself. So now that you have your limiting belief, you wrote it down, then write down every single reason why it's BS, why it's so idiotic, why it's so unrealistic, and your brain's going to keep working. And not only are you in the process of disproving this limiting belief, but then just below that, I ask people, my clients or whoever I'm talking to, write down your new empowering belief. Write down a new belief you need to adopt in order to become the best version of yourself. And then your brain is going to go crazy. You're going to start writing exactly what you need to do. Side note, because at the end of the day, we all know what we need. We all know inside of us the answers, but sometimes we need someone else or something else to extract it from us, right? And that's what this exercise essentially does. So once you do realize what new belief you need to adopt, then that's where I would encourage people doing that exercise I just mentioned earlier is close your eyes, be in a quiet room, close your eyes for like 10 minutes, and just envision every single moment from your life where it is the exact opposite of your limiting belief, but proves the empowering one. So for me, I told myself I was a failure. Well, instead of me envisioning all these moments where I failed, let me envision, relive moments where I was successful, where I was accomplished. And then they all flooded in. And then instead of me just thinking about it, I'm reliving it as if it's happening all over again. And not only did it make me feel good, but it made me feel confident because I was there. I did these things. I am capable. I've done all these things in my past. Who's to say I can't do more or do greater things, right? And again, an additional side note, why this works so well, it's not just visualization, it's not just to motivate you. Not only is this experience true and does prove that you are successful or whatever the opposite of your limiting belief is, not only does it prove that, but something I learned is that our brains cannot distinguish the difference between imagination and reality. So a lot of times when we feel like we're failures, we suck, sometimes when we envision something, it's not even anything that has happened before. We're projecting. So let's say we have a presentation we have to give at work tomorrow or do something, and we envision that we're mumbling our words, we fail, we're sweating profusely, we pee our pants, whatever the case may be. We're projecting this reality that's not even real, right? So a part of the reason why I ask people to do visualization exercises like that is not only get you back into the state where you were when you were successful, but even if it's trying to project on a goal you want, right? Your brain does not realize it's real or fake. It can't distinguish the difference. So when you are in a state where you see yourself succeeding and when you're celebrating a victory and when you're in this mode, your brain perceives it as real, therefore giving you this feeling of confidence that you know you're going to do it and you're going to be able to accomplish anything.
So you just shared a really powerful exercise, and I realized for me, when I have a lot of mental chaos, the best thing for me to do is go pen to paper.
Mhm.
Because when I can get it out of here, when I can get it out of my mind and that monkey mind, which creates a mess, when I can put it on paper and then look at it, we can even see then and be able to dispel the beliefs. And so actually this is coming to mind. I had a client do this in the last few weeks because he had so much, and this guy has had a lot of success in business, like been able to amass millions. And still he's sitting in self-doubt, fear of failure, which is leading to distraction, overwhelm, impatience, etc. So I had him write pen to paper so he could see I have made money doing this. So like you're sharing, like you create belief, conviction, you find evidence. But again, this takes so much awareness and mental training, but like that's the work that has to be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I'd love to know from you, what are some of your daily rituals? Because I imagine I have off days. I would think you have off days or things happen. But what are you doing to stay top of mind, mindful, intentional, and be able to course correct?
Yeah, so for me, I love this question because I get asked this a lot. Is I make sure specifically in the mornings I'm setting myself up for success for the day because a lot of times, and maybe you can relate to this. I know pretty much everyone listening can relate to this. Is a lot of times when something negative happens in the morning, it almost dictates the rest of our days, right? It's like, oh, we stubbed our toe, we spilled our coffee, therefore the rest of our day is going to be crappy, right? For me to get myself right for the day, the first thing I do when I wake up is I make sure to not look at my emails, not look at Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever the case may be. I come here in my office because if I did it in my bedroom, my fiance would not be happy. I come in here and I get myself in the proper state. And how I do that is a couple of ways. First, I do what's called getting into a peak state, right? I know you probably know this, is I get myself physically ready, right? Because have you ever heard the saying, motion is lotion?
Well, are you talking about energies? I mean, emotions?
Yeah, but just physically speaking, have
Motion
you
is
heard it?
lotion. I don't know if I've heard that one.
Well, it's something I used to hear about a lot, when I was like in the gyms and when I was around like physical therapists. Like, hey, if you want to feel better, motion is lotion. Just keep moving, keep walking, keep doing something. Well,
Ah.
that made 100% sense to me, but emotionally as well. Because again, what I learned is that any emotion you feel currently is being directly reflected on your body language.
Hmm.
So anytime that you think back to a time where you're angry, where you're sad, anxious, your body language is reflecting that. So if you could paint a picture, it's like, you're cuddled up on the couch in the fetal position. You're laying in bed, you're not moving. Whenever we feel the most negative, we're probably not moving, right?
Yep.
So what I do every morning is instead of going to my phone, I get in the right state. I do my little peak state exercise. I move my body. I'll put on my headphones. I'll dance to a song. I'll beat on my chest like a gorilla. I'll do jumping jacks. I'll do anything to radically change how my body looks and behaves to therefore change my emotion.
Yep.
And when I change not only the way I feel, but when I'm in that peak state, when I'm at my best, I have the ability to make better decisions. Because then, again, if you think back to all the times where you were angry, you probably didn't make the best decisions when you're angry or when you're sad or when you're anxious. So, for me to become the best version of myself, I need to make the best decisions. And how do I do that? First, I need to get my mind right. I need to get my body right. So that's one thing. As I move my body, right? People do the cold plunges. They'll take cold showers. Go for it. Do it. If that really helps you, go for it. And then the second thing I do is like this meditative exercise. There's a few minutes where it's dedicated to being grateful. There's a few minutes dedicated to giving blessings to me, my loved ones, my family. There's a few minutes dedicated to visualizing what goals I want. But essentially, what the exercise is meant to do is to A, bring you back to center, but bring you back to your higher self. Bring you back to who is Carlo, who is Heather, who is John, right? Going back and reliving moments where it makes your heart feel warm, when you're grateful, moments where you felt love, moments where you felt laughter, moments where you felt excitement, and you're just constantly stacking one on top of another, one top of another. Because I remember when we were speaking during the pre-call, is we get what we focus on, right? So if we let everything that is external come into our internal world and let it affect us, that's not going to be a pretty picture. But if I can take everything from my life where I see beauty, I see love, I see grace, I see everything that serves me, and I choose to focus that and visualize and relive these moments, these beautiful moments from my life, and just stack one on top of another, one top of another, and just keep going, it makes me feel so whole. It makes me feel so peaceful. It makes me feel so present.
Yeah.
And then when I'm done, I feel like $1,000,000. And then that's how I start my day. So that's just a little tidbit of what I do to help me be the Carlo I am today.
Well, and I love asking that question because everybody does things differently. But the point is, people who are living mindfully intentionally, those quote top 3%ers, some people say 1%er, the point is the minority are very intentional. And so I love hearing different people's practices and rituals. But ultimately, it comes down to when you take care of yourself, you can then be proactive throughout the day rather than in a state of reactive.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And you know what else? While you were sharing all that, what I wrote down, which totally makes sense, that our physiology affects our psychology.
Mhm.
And if we just understand that, but you're right, like when you're sunken into the couch and having a pity party or woe is me, like that's why Tony Robbins is all about. Change your state, like get up, do
Yep.
jumping jacks, go for a walk, dance, but you got to move the energy.
Motion evokes emotion. He says it like the best says it himself. Motion
Yeah,
evokes emotion.
I love that. Okay, so the next thing I want to ask you about is when it comes to mindset and all this work because so you're primarily working with quote high achievers.
Yes.
How have they been really successful in one area of life, but then lacking fulfillment or relationships or the health has gone to the wayside?
Yeah. So this is something that really resonates with me because that's who I feel like I am, right? And something that I experience, and this is what I experience with clients as well, and when I speak to people, is they either are in pursuit of the quote unquote external success that we're all told about, the money, the house, the wife, kids, all that stuff, or they are already at that level, but they don't have that fulfillment. It's partially because of what we're told when we're younger, and it's being this conditioned process of okay, you need to go to school, get a good job, make some money, and then be able to support yourself and your family. Okay, cool. But they didn't tell us that there is a fine print down there that says, oh, you're probably not going to like what you're doing, right? And this would lead to a lot of unfulfillment. Because I remember I was speaking to this gentleman earlier. This was maybe a couple months ago. He owns his own insurance company, right? He's the nicest guy, right? But you could tell in his tonality and his body language, and just from what he was actually telling me, he's just like not the most fulfilled person. Because who, when they're 10 years old, says, I want to get an insurance? Like nobody says that,
Yeah,
and I'm not bashing the insurance business. Like, hey, if you genuinely love it, go for it.
yeah,
But, when it comes to the external success that we're all striving for, we're all chasing the dollar sign. We're all chasing the big house, the car, right? The money, the watches. Some people just love the external stuff, the material stuff. And when we are in our journey, we're not really looking at what fulfills us, what we actually love, because two things. One, we just don't do it. And two, even if we do it, we either say to ourselves or other people plant a seed in our head that says, oh, you can't make money out of that. You can't support a family on that. You can't that's no way to live.
yeah,
We believe it, and then we go the corporate route, right? We climb
yeah,
the corporate ladder or we start our own business that we may not even fully love, but we heard there's a good ROI in it, right? And yeah, all that stuff is great and dandy if you want to make a bunch of money and do all these things. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people, my close friends even, who made a lot of money, but they weren't fulfilled and happy.
right,
And that's the disconnect
right.
is we're told a story from someone else that probably may not even be fulfilled. Oh, this is what you need to do to be successful. Okay, perfect. But the scales are so unbalanced because we have external success, but no one teaches us to be mindful. No one teaches us what can make us fulfilled or what we even should be doing to find fulfillment, happiness, and purpose, right? It's all up here. And when people get there, or when they're in the pursuit of getting there, they're so unfulfilled. They're driving to work in traffic and they're just like, what am I doing? They're in the office or they're on a Zoom meeting with their business partners and they're like, what am I doing? Like, I don't even like doing this. Why am I here?
Yeah,
Right? And then those questions start to ring. And then when we ask ourselves these questions, and I was there myself, and you mentioned you were there as well, is what went wrong? Like, why am I here? I'm not meant to be this person in this rat race running on the hamster wheel nonstop. Life has to mean more than just this.
yeah,
And when people ask that question and they don't know the answer because they never really pondered that question before, they're getting hit with it for the first time. They don't know what to do.
yeah,
Just like any first time thing that we try to do, right? When we're babies, when we try to walk, the first time we try to walk, we fall down. We're like, oh, what happened? You know, the first time we experience heartache, heart breakups, we don't know what to do. We've never experienced this before. So when people, men, women, anyone who's asked that question, they're like, what do I do now? They don't know how to react. And that's perfectly normal. But the thing is that no one teaches them what to do, how to think, what processes they can do in order to find that fulfillment and happiness. But when we can plug in that hole, when we actually ask them questions or when they can ask themselves important questions, learn these mindfulness techniques, learn what it means to be self aware, that's plugging in the gap, right? And
Yeah.
that's probably a long winded answer to your question, but you know, I feel like that's the biggest disconnect. And when we can fill in that hole, when we can teach, when we can actually show people what is possible, what they can do in order to find themselves, like the game's over. And so not only will they have external success, but they'll have internal success as well. When you have
Right.
both of those things, match made in heaven.
Well, what I wrote down, like it takes a lot of courage to get out of your comfort zone. And for me especially, I come from a very old school family. So I was taught and my parents put me through school, get a good job, get a stable paycheck. That is what we're conditioned and programmed. It's very heavy. So to break away from that paradigm took a lot of courage. I had to face fear of failure and all of that. However, I let my like intuitive side guide me because like the I realized the American dream wasn't my dream. And then here's what comes to mind. So this just happened last week. Joey Chestnut. Apparently he's like the 16 I think. I hope I'm not making that number up. The
I
dude
think you're
has
right.
won a hot dog eating contest for many years in a row. And so I literally posted on LinkedIn. I was like, "Hey friends, if this guy can make millions of dollars shoving hot dogs down his throat, you literally could do anything."
Mm-hmm.
And I got a lot of engagement with that post, but I was being serious. Like, think about singers, somebody who loves singing, who has made billions of dollars because they took a chance or they just followed their passion. We all have that within.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes some courage to break free from that.
You said something that was really intriguing to me, intuition. Because I remember I had a conversation with one of my good buddies about this, you know, and we were just on the topic of like, oh, are we doing the right thing? Or, should we be doing anything different? Just general speaking. And then he brought up intuition. And he said intuition is guided by a higher source, higher power, God, universe, whatever you want to call it. Like, you can't not listen to intuition, right? We all have that gut feeling. We all deep down know what it is we're meant for, what it is we want, what we don't want. If we listen to our intuition more, I feel like we can definitely be in a different spot than where we might be currently in if it's something that's unfavorable. So when you mentioned that, it sparked a light bulb in me.
Are you familiar with the 12-step hero's journey?
I've heard of it, but like I've never like read it. I don't know if it's like an actual like uh manuscript, like a book. But I know what you're talking about.
So I don't know if it's a book, but there's an actual, so whoever, if you're listening or watching this, I would highly recommend Google this. I played a lot with it in Chat GPT. But anyway, the hero's journey is like the first step is the call to adventure.
Mhm.
And a lot of people won't listen to the call, which keeps you stuck, struggling, suffering in limitation. And that's not your true essence. But we will all have that call to adventure, and then you'll go through and Google it, hero's journey.
I
And you'll
will,
go
yeah.
through these different 12 steps of like, that you 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, but just understand like it's resilience, it's perseverance. It's like you will go through some call it the dark night of the soul. In Hero's Journey, it calls it the inmost cave. And then it's like, think about a butterfly. We all go through this like cocoon period, which it sounds like you did in 21. You go through this kind of like dark stage. But at some point, you break free and like you're liberated and free. And the 10 steps behind you had to happen and you wouldn't take any of it back.
Yeah.
So we're all on our own hero's journey. Listen to your call. Pay attention to that call.
I mean, I don't think I can add anything on top of that. Like that was just brilliant. And I believe it, is that we all are meant for more. I know every single person on earth is meant for more than what they think they're capable of or what they're
Yeah.
currently doing. Because again, my friends, like you're not meant to work a 9 to 5 for the rest of your life, retire at 65. Like you are an eternal being, right?
Yeah.
We are all one. We are God. We are the universe. We're all the exact same. Just because this external world is something so small, societal norms, like that's nothing compared to what you're actually meant for, right? So again, intuition, listen for the call, like it's here. Like you know what you want to do.
Well, even on that note, like to broaden your perspective, I think it's through quantum physics. But anyway, that we literally are only experiencing less than 1% of reality
Yeah.
because 99.99% is empty space. And the things we see as matter that we can see, touch, feel, taste is literally less than 1%. So, like that alone should blow your mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's what I want to ask you. If we could bring it full circle, this idea of fulfillment, because I think a lot of people are in that boat, lacking fulfillment, not happy, wanting purpose. Is there any sort of tool or inquiry or something you could give people to bring out the curiosity to help direct them?
Yeah. So the first thing we need to do is just come back to center, right? Come back to who we are. It's almost like hitting the reset button on yourself. Because let's be honest, you're not going to be thinking clearly. You're not going to be able to think from your higher self. You're not going to be able to access your higher self if you're in a constant state of negativity, anxiety, fear, anger. So the first thing I would recommend people doing, I mean, there's so many things when it comes to fulfillment, stuff like that. I could talk for hours about this. But if you want to start from the beginning, and right now you're in a state of negativity, I have what I learned is called the 90-second rule, right? For 90 seconds, just remove yourself from this negative situation, whatever you're in, and be with yourself for 90 seconds. And within these 90 seconds, you have to do three things. And it's divided by three. So you have 30 seconds for each task I'm asking you to do. For 30 seconds, just change your physiology, change your body language, do some jumping jacks, go for a walk, get in an ice plunge, do sprinting in place. I don't care. Dance. Do something for 30 seconds to radically change the way your physiology is or the way your body language is. Then for the next 30 seconds, change what you're focusing on. If somebody cut you off in traffic, stop focusing on the stupid person that cut you off in traffic. Focus on what it is you want, what it is you see yourself doing, what is it that you really want most in your life, what is it you want most out of this situation. Think about and focus on whatever it is that serves you and envision that. And then for the last 30 seconds, change the language you're using, change what you're saying. Because we all say, I'll never find meaning. I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. Oh, this is terrible. Anything we say to ourselves or about a certain experience becomes the experience, becomes truth and identity of ourselves. So if we change the language we use, we can change our identity and we can change the experience that we are seeing. So if you want to find deeper fulfillment, first you have to be in a clear state of mind. And just for 90 seconds, it's putting you back at center and resetting you. And then when you're there, I mean, I could speak out more things, but again, ask yourself questions.
Yeah.
What it is you want? What it is do I want to be doing? What am I passionate about? What are my interests? What do I love doing? What can I see myself doing? And even if you can't answer that question, that's totally fine. That doesn't mean that you're doomed and you're going to be unfulfilled for the rest of your life. That just means you might have more to experience, more things to try, more things to explore. And then when you're in this exploration phase, you'll probably find something that really sparks an interest in you that you may really fall in love with. And then you can follow that road, right? So that's just a quick 1 to 2 minute spiel about how we can find fulfillment, what's the first process we can do. And that's what helps me. That's what helps my clients. So hopefully it helps everyone listening.
Well, and that tool, a 90-second reframe, it brings, there's so many benefits. Brings you back to the present moment. It stops the momentum of the negative narratives. It's like, that's a very great self-awareness, mindful practice. Here's what I want to ask you. If you could sum up our conversation, what is a key takeaway you want listeners to get?
A key takeaway, I don't know if I believe I mentioned it before, but I'll reemphasize it because this is so crucial, is you will get what you focus on. You experience the life you focus on. So if you're always experiencing negativity, sadness, anger, frustration, fear, pay attention to why you feel that way. It's because you're constantly focusing on it. Something that I learned, and we actually spoke about this in the pre-call, is not only do we experience the life we focus on, but we also feel it, right? And whatever is wrong in the world and life is always going to be available, right? There's a surplus of it. But whatever is right is always available as well. And
Mm.
we have the choice to either focus on the negative, what doesn't serve us, or on what does serve us. Whatever is beneficial and impactful in your life is always available. So choose to focus on that, and it'll make you feel 10 times better.
Love that word, choice. And you know what I always say on social is whatever you are not changing, you are choosing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get any truer than that.
Truth bomb. All right, here's what I'd love to do to wrap up the interview. I have a few rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
What is a quote or motto that you live by?
Oh God. I don't want to say the same one you gave me focus on, but can I go with that one? That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
That's fine. Yep.
Okay, perfect. I know
Well,
driving.
yeah. What is a book you're currently reading or highly recommend in this space?
I'm currently reading Best Self by Mike Bayer.
What's that about?
So it's essentially how to become your best self, right? And it's like these cool little insights, tools, methods, and what it is we're currently doing that is bringing our quote unquote anti self to the surface.
Hmm.
And what are things we can do instead to replace that to become our best selves, to perform at our highest level, to be our true higher selves. And that's kind of what the book is, Best Self. That's why it's named that. And
Yeah.
it's a good read. I'm almost done with it, and I'd highly recommend it.
Is there any new teaching or thought that you haven't heard before? I guess I'll let you think, but the reason I ask that is I have found whether it's modern day or ancient teachings, we're all just regurgitating the same thing, maybe a different lens or perspective, but once you boil it all down, like change is simple. Not necessarily easy at first, but it's simple. So I'm just curious if there was any thought-provoking.
Honestly, I can't really think of one, and if there is one, again, I know I sound like I'm beating a dead horse here, but there's a book, As a Man Thinketh, written by James Allen,
Yep.
I think. That book is literally, you can read it in 30 minutes. I don't know when that book was written, but he literally says you become what you think about. And that couldn't be truer.
I think it was early 1900s, I think.
Still, I mean, even
Yeah.
if in Marcus Aurelius's like his diary essentially, I mean, they made it into a book, but in what he says, it's the exact same thing. And that was written in like
Yeah.
ancient Roman times. Like I forget the exact year, but like thousands of years ago. And it's so evident today on how truthful it is.
Yep. All right, final question. What advice would you give your younger self?
What I would tell my younger self is I know it sucks right now. You think this is the end, but I promise you, you're meant for more. I
Mhm.
know you're not going to believe me, but if you just keep going, if you make one decision today, just make it to the end of today. And then tomorrow, do the same thing. And eventually, you're going to find out that you're going to get out of this tunnel and you're going to be seeing what your true potential is.
Ah, what a powerful note to end on. Carlo, thank you so much for joining me.
Heather, thank you so much. I appreciate you.